All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep on this one. Percival Everett's James.
James, yeah.
Now,
Okay.
you might be thinking like, oh, isn't that just, a retelling of Huck Finn?
Right.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's actually told from Jim's point of view, the runaway slave.
Right.
And we've got some great sources to like really break this down. We've got LitCharts.
Oh, cool.
We've got the Bibliophile and even a BookBrowse review.
Nice.
So it's going to be a wild ride, I think.
Yeah.
As we kind of see what happens when, a classic story gets flipped on its head.
It's not even just flipped. It's like completely transformed,
Oh, yeah.
It's like imagine seeing Huck Finn and American history through this lens that's been silenced for centuries.
Right.
Like that's what Everett does.
And that's a great point.
He gives Jim agency, he gives him intelligence, and he gives him a voice.
Yeah, and, in Twain's version, Jim is, kind of this like stock character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But what I'm getting from these sources, and especially like that LitCharts analysis, is that Everett creates a multifaceted Jim.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. He even uses language in a way that reveals like Jim's strategic thinking.
Oh, wow.
There's this concept called code switching.
Right.
Where someone will like shift between different ways of speaking depending on like who they're talking to in the situation.
Yeah.
And LitCharts points out how Jim uses this going from vernacular to more like standard English. And it makes you realize he's playing in the game to survive.
Whoa, that's like a mind-blowing detail.
Right.
It's like he's wearing a mask in front of white folks.
Right.
But behind it is this like sharp, aware individual.
Exactly. And it's like it connects to how Everett is like dismantling those harmful stereotypes about enslaved people.
Yeah.
Jim teaching himself to read using books from Judge Thatcher's office.
Right.
That's not in Twain.
Right.
That throws a wrench in the whole simple, uneducated slave trope.
Totally. And speaking of wrenches,
Yeah.
that scene from the Bibliophile where young George gets brutally punished
Oh my gosh.
for stealing a pencil for Jim.
I know.
I mean,
It's so sad.
talk about heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It just hammers home the cruelty of the system.
Absolutely. It makes you question like all these power dynamics at play.
Yeah.
Even in these seemingly small interactions.
Right.
And then there's like Jim's relationship with Huck.
Right.
Which is fascinating how Everett reframes it through Jim's eyes.
Yeah, it's way more complicated than just friendship.
Right.
Especially when you consider the reveal
Oh, yeah.
that Huck is actually Jim's son.
Yeah.
That plot twist from the Bibliophile blew my mind.
It completely shifts the dynamic,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Suddenly it's about fatherhood, it's about responsibility, it's about their shared struggle.
Right.
You see Huck's privilege
Yeah.
through Jim's perspective.
Yeah.
His naivete, but also like his slow awakening to the injustice around him.
Man, I've already seen Huck Finn in a whole new light.
I know, right?
And what's really striking me is that, like,
Yeah.
James isn't just about slavery.
Right.
It's about so much more.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's about identity. It's about family.
Right.
It's about the fight for freedom.
Absolutely.
It's a story that resonates with us even today,
Oh, wait.
with all these conversations about race, justice, and representation.
For sure. I think we need to, like, dive a little deeper into these themes.
Okay.
Especially, like, Jim's time with the minstrel troupe.
Yes.
It's mentioned in the Bibliophile.
Yes.
And it seems like a pretty poignant critique of, like, racist entertainment.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that Jim is forced to perform in blackface
I know.
is just gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
It shows how black performers were exploited,
Right.
made to participate in their own mockery.
Yeah.
And then there's his relationship with Norman,
Right.
the white passing former slave.
Yeah.
Talk about complex.
Right. Raise all these questions about racial identity and survival.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
how much of yourself do you have to hide
Mm-hmm.
to exist in a world obsessed with categories?
That's a question that still haunts us today in many ways.
Right.
And it's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on Jim's daring plan to escape and like buy back his family.
Ooh, there's so much to unpack here, and we're just getting started.
No, right?
This is heavy stuff,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly engaging.
It is. It's a story that grabs you and doesn't let go. So Welcome back to our deep dive into James.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating how Everett takes this classic adventure narrative and he weaves in these, like, incredibly complex themes.
Right.
So, like, when we left off,
Yeah.
Jim and Norman had, like, cooked up this audacious scheme to stage Jim's escape and sail, like, over and over again with the goal of buying back their families.
Yeah, it's like a reverse heist.
Right.
But as we know from the Bibliophile's plot summary, their first attempt hits a major snag.
Right. Norman, passing as white, sells Jim to this sawmill owner named Henderson. But Henderson turns out to be a brutal guy.
Right.
Jim witnesses him mistreating another enslaved woman named Sammy.
Oh, gosh.
And he just can't stand by and watch.
Right.
You know.
So he risks everything to help Sammy escape.
Yes.
Talk about courage. He's not just focused on his own freedom.
Right.
He's willing to put his life on the lines for someone else.
It's a really powerful moment.
Yeah.
It really shows Jim's character.
Yeah.
But it also, like, underscores the constant danger that surrounded enslaved people.
For sure.
And tragically, Sammy is shot and killed during the escape.
Oh, no.
It's just a stark reminder of the violence that was, like, woven into the fabric of their lives.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
You know, but the story doesn't stop there.
It doesn't.
Jim and Norman, they manage to survive.
Yeah.
And they eventually find themselves on a riverboat.
Yeah.
Packed with people fleeing the South as the Civil War breaks out.
Imagine the chaos, the fear, the uncertainty.
I know.
And in the midst of all this, Jim bumps into Huck again.
Right.
But this time, things are even more complicated.
Hold on, because if I'm remembering right from the Bibliophile, Huck is now traveling with the Duke and the King.
Oh, yeah.
Those con men who tried to sell Jim earlier.
Yeah.
Like a twisted family reunion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as if things weren't tense enough,
right?
The riverboat explodes.
Oh, my gosh.
Throwing everyone into the churning water.
Wow.
And Jim is faced with this impossible choice.
Oh, God.
Save Norman or save Huck.
Wow. You really feel the weight of that decision, don't you?
Yeah.
It's a moment that makes you consider, like, the impossible choices enslaved people were forced to make.
Exactly.
You know, and in a truly gut-wrenching turn of events, Jim chooses to save Huck.
He does.
Leading to Norman's death.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice that, like, speaks volumes about their bond.
It really does.
Especially when we learn the truth about their connection. Now, remind me, how does Everett reveal that Huck is actually Jim's son?
Okay, so it unfolds quietly, but it packs a punch.
Okay.
They're huddled together after the explosion.
Right.
And Huck asks Jim why he risked his life for him. And Jim, with tears in his eyes, reveals that Huck's mother was a childhood friend.
Right.
And that they had a relationship.
Wow, that changes everything.
It changes everything.
Suddenly, it's not just about escape.
Right.
It's about legacy, inherited trauma, and the complexities of family ties.
Yeah. You know, it's like Everett is weaving together the personal and the political in such a profound way.
And think about what this does to Huck's sense of identity.
Right.
He's white passing.
Yeah.
Raised in a society that tells him he's superior.
Yeah.
Yet he carries the blood of a man who has been enslaved and dehumanized.
Exactly.
A powerful commentary on, like, the absurdity of racial categories and the ways in which they're used to uphold systems of oppression.
Yes, and it leads to this really poignant scene where Jim encourages Huck to continue passing as white, not to deny his heritage, but to protect himself.
Wow.
It's a bittersweet moment.
Yeah.
It reveals the depth of Jim's love and his understanding of the world's cruelty.
Yeah.
But their journey's not over.
Right.
Remember, Jim still needs to find his wife, Sadie, and his daughter, Lizzie.
Right. And the Bibliophile mentions they returned to Hannibal, Missouri.
Yeah.
Only to discover that Sadie and Lizzie have been sold to another plantation.
Yes.
And this is where things take a darker, more violent turn.
Exactly. Jim's rage and despair start to boil over.
Right.
Especially when he witnesses the overseer Hopkins committing a horrific act of violence.
You're talking about the scene where Hopkins is raping a young woman named Katie, right?
Yes. That's a turning point in the story.
Yeah.
It pushes Jim to a breaking point.
All those years of pent-up anger, the injustice he's witnessed, the pain of being separated from his family.
Yes.
It all explodes in a moment of righteous fury.
It does. And on Jackson Island, the very place where their journey began, Jim confronts Hopkins and kills him.
It's a brutal act, but you can almost feel the weight of history behind it. It's like the violence of the system is finally being turned back on itself.
And in a way, it's a moment of liberation.
Right, yep.
Jim is no longer a passive victim.
Yeah.
He's taking a stand, fighting back with the only means available to him.
It's a turning point, not just for Jim.
Right.
But for the story itself.
Yes.
He's no longer just trying to escape. He's fighting for something bigger.
Exactly.
The freedom of his family.
Yeah.
And for his own right to exist as a human being.
And that's what sets the stage for the final act of the story.
Okay.
With Hopkins gone, Jim embarks on this desperate mission to reunite with Sadie and Lizzie.
Yeah.
And this mission will lead him to a face-to-face confrontation with Judge Thatcher.
Oh.
The man who holds the key to finding his family.
It's like the walls are closing in.
Yes.
The tension is building.
Yeah.
And we're headed for a climax that's both thrilling and emotionally charged.
It is, and we'll dive into that resolution in the next part of our deep dive.
So stay tuned, listeners, because we're about to uncover the final chapter of James.
Yes.
This is where it all comes to a head. All right, so we're back, and we are in the final part of our deep dive into James.
Yeah, the tension is high.
Things are about to get real.
Yeah.
Last we left off, Jim had made that agonizing decision to kill Hopkins.
Right.
And now he's laser focused on finding his family.
He's not messing around.
No, he's not.
He goes straight to Judge Thatcher, the man with the information he needs.
But he doesn't just, politely ask, right?
Wow.
The Bibliophile mentioned something at a confrontation.
Oh, it's more than a confrontation.
Okay.
Armed with Hopkins' pistol, Jim forces Thatcher to reveal where Sadie and Lizzie are being held.
Whoa!
Yeah.
It's a total power reversal.
It is.
The enslaved man,
right,
once deemed powerless,
yeah,
is now in control.
And Thatcher is terrified.
Wow.
He sees a side of Jim that he and society at large has refused to acknowledge.
Right.
His intelligence, his determination, his humanity.
It's like it shatters those assumptions about who deserves power and who doesn't.
Exactly.
It makes you think about how, those assumptions were used to justify slavery in the first place.
Absolutely.
It's like Everett is holding up a mirror to the hypocrisy of the whole system.
It is. And this encounter isn't just about getting information.
Right.
It's about reclaiming agency, asserting one's right to exist on their own terms.
It's a powerful moment.
Yes.
So what happens next? The Bibliophile mentioned something about the Graham farm being a slave breeding plantation.
Yeah, this is where the story gets really dark.
Right.
Everett doesn't shy away from the most horrific aspects of slavery.
Right.
The Graham farm isn't just about forced labor. It's about the systematic dehumanization and exploitation of Black bodies for profit.
It's tough.
Families are torn apart. Women are subjected to sexual violence.
Right.
Human beings are treated as commodities.
It's a stark reminder of the true brutality of that system.
It is.
It's hard to read about.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that this was the reality for millions of people.
It was. And Jim, seeing this firsthand, takes action.
Yeah.
He doesn't just free his family.
Right.
He liberates all the enslaved people on the plantation.
Wow.
They set fire to the field, striking fear into the hearts of their oppressors.
It's a moment of rebellion.
It is.
Of righteous anger unleashed.
Yeah.
He's not just fighting for himself anymore.
Right.
He's fighting for the collective freedom of his people.
And while their escape is dangerous,
right,
full of risks,
yeah,
Jim, Sadie, and Lizzie eventually find refuge in Iowa, a free state.
But even in freedom,
yeah,
there's this sense of unease.
Yeah.
Like a feeling that the trauma of the past will continue to haunt them.
Absolutely. It's not a fairy tale ending.
No.
The scars of slavery run deep.
No.
And that's reflected in the final scene.
Okay.
When a sheriff questions them, asking if any of them are the runaway slave Jim, he boldly declares,
what does he say?
"My name is James."
Wow. What a powerful statement.
It is.
It's like he's rejecting the label that was forced upon him.
Right.
Reclaiming his identity on his own terms.
It's not just a name change, it's a transformation.
Right.
He's no longer Jim, the runaway slave.
Yeah.
He's James, a free man, a father, a husband, a survivor.
It's a powerful ending.
It is.
Both hopeful and realistic.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the long road to healing that lies ahead.
And it leaves us with so much to think about.
I know.
How do we confront the legacy of slavery in our own time?
Right.
How do we create a society where everyone has the opportunity to claim their own name, their own narrative, their own freedom?
James doesn't offer easy answers.
No.
But it does force us to ask these difficult but essential questions.
They are essential.
Well, this has been quite a journey.
It has.
And, for those of you who want to experience this incredible story firsthand,
yes,
You can get the full audiobook of James by Percival Everett completely free.
That's right.
Through Audible.
Yes.
Just click the link below this podcast.
You'll want to miss this one.
And as always,
yes,
don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future deep dives.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.